This is an important intro into the next conversation we're having, because now we're going to talk about that little thing called wealth. And the reason I'm very passionate about this is because I think as a generation and as a race group, as we are discovering this thing called freedom and coming into self-expression, there is a boundary to be drawn between being ostentatious and unnecessary and really building wealth. And I'm joined by a dear friend, a man who is without question the authority on this subject matter in South Africa today, I would argue actually globally. Mike Fannin. Mike's an expert in designing tax-efficient solutions for high-net-worth clients and is dedicated to creating bespoke solutions that deliver sustainable wealth for clients. Mike is also a director at Carrick Wealth. Now, Mike, I have to declare to the listeners here today that the reason you and I are so well acquainted is because you have been in a very important part of what's helped me build wealth for myself and managing my own wealth solutions. So I can speak to Mike's authority and Mike's ability because I know he's done it for me. That's why I would bring him for you to have this conversation with us. But quickly, Bomkaya, so what is wealth and what is the difference between being rich and being wealthy? You know, everybody says they want to be rich, but I think what people really mean is they want to be wealthy. And there is, although subtle, a critical difference between the two things. See, building wealth isn't just a desire to become rich. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And when I watch people who come into income and with income consumption become these things they call in the hip-hop language big ballers, talk about being filthy rich and blowing cash, the truth is smart people are quietly building sustainable wealth in the background. Because, as I say to many young people that I mentor, money talks, wealth whispers. So Mike, thanks for joining us on the conversation, bud.
Thanks very much, Vusi, and that's quite a statement. Wealth whispers. I think you're definitely right there.
Yeah.
I just want to touch, as you were talking there, you spoke about one thing, and the word you mentioned was the word freedom.
Yeah.
And, that to me is what it really comes down to. Wealth is a definition of freedom.
Yeah.
It's the ability to break those chains and start to be able to do the things that you want to do, not the things you have to do. I'll give you an example, and everybody will know the guy who's the lawyer earning 100,000, 200,000 a month, and he drives 2 flashy cars. They live in the gated estate. They eat in some of the finest restaurants 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Go to the best holidays around the world.
Yeah.
And they'll look at that guy and say, that's wealth. Now, what that guy is actually is chains. Because at the end of each month, there's nothing left. And all that lifestyle, all the debt that he owes him paying, it's a chain around him. It's actually slowing him down. The freedom is the guy who's actually slowly but surely growing that egg. And I always say it's like putting aside some soldiers every month that go to work for you, and those soldiers start to go to work generating a lifestyle where you're free from the everyday doldrums that we have to go through.
Yeah. So there's 2 things I want to touch on first, and we need to have the conversation pieces around specifically what I've heard coined as black tax. And I don't think it's a tax, but we'll chat about it in a minute. But just quickly, as you've made the example about the guy who's living in the lifestyle, I know you are an important part of what helped me unlock that, because for a long time, I was locked in that lifestyle where I had the 2 V8 engines and I had the 2 properties, one here and one on the coast, and I was taking my family on 2 overseas holidays a year. But at the end of every single month, I was starting every single month on a net zero basis. And a part of what you helped me to was to start thinking about preservation. What is this concept of preservation?
Well, essentially what it is that, it's hard to describe. Essentially, preserving your wealth is making sure that it's there for the times when you're going to need it. It's things like your retirement. It's things like the education of your children.
But Mike, hold on. I'm 33 years old. I'm never going to retire. I mean, that's the mindset of many of us young people, right? Is that moment will never come when I have to worry about retiring, or I'll always be able to afford my kids' education. This
I'm going to ruin your
education
day.
one.
I'm gonna ruin your day. I'll give you 2 interesting quick statistics, okay? If you were to take out of 30-year-olds, 100 30-year-olds today, we took a sample of them.
Yeah.
Only 1 out of 100 will be okay in retirement, to have enough money to support themselves. 3 or 4 out of those 100 will be living with friends and family. And the rest, well, they're waiting for the pension fairy, my friend. They're waiting for this lady to come down and wave a wand and take care of them because there's nothing else. They've got no other chance.
What's that about? Is that because we dissociate the time distance from how far retirement is? So if I'm 30, for instance, I'm thinking about retirement at 65 and I go, well, I've got 35 years to make it up. So of course I'm going to go to the club on Friday, as opposed to save that extra $2,000, because why wouldn't I do that?
Completely. And I think that the thing is that's exactly what it is. You think about it just as those $2,000. And I challenge anybody, go and take that $2,000 and put it into any one of the calculators you'll find online.
Yeah.
And if you were to just invest that $2,000 at 7% a year, which is not a lot, turn out what it actually grows, and then you'll see what it's actually costing you.
Yeah, but when I rock up at the club, I can't bring my share certificate or my retirement annuity certificate.
No, you can't. But I'll tell you what, the hard part about it is there's a lot of guys who've rocked up at their club, and there's a history of people who've been the biggest ballers in town.
Yeah.
Worldwide. My favorite story is 50 Cent.
Yeah,
he was worth $500 million. And in 2015 declared bankruptcy.
How does that work, by the way? I mean, but for the benefit of our listeners, when they say Jay-Z is worth $1 billion, or they say 50 Cent is worth $500 million, many people actually think that means he's got $500 million in cash. Is that what it is?
No, not necessarily. I mean, for most of the guys, it'll be investments.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll take into account future earnings. If I've got an endorsement, for example, that's paying me 10 years at $1 million a year to go and wear a pair of Nikes, then somebody will say I'm worth $10 million.
Yeah.
But, the biggest thing about it is that, and all of these people, what happens is you spend more than what you actually have. And that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter how much. If it's $1 million, R1 million, 100,000 Rand.
Yeah.
All of it comes down to spending more than I have. It's spending the future.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to think about. You think about it when you're spending that cash, you're saying, okay, I'll spend it tonight and I'm going to go and buy 5 bottles of champagne so I can be a hero in the club. You just spent 3 weeks of your future.
Yeah.
And that's what it's costing you each and every time. So that's what it is. And you know what? Sometimes, make no mistake, I've done it. Sometimes you think, oh, but that was such a good night, it was worth it. But if you keep adding it up at 3 weeks every time, think about 4 Friday nights.
Yeah.
3 weeks every time.
Yeah.
I just lost 3 months.
I got to tell you, so one of the conversations we had, and for the listeners listening in, guys, and I'd love to hear your stories about this. So tweet me at Vusi Thembekwayo or tweet at KaiFM 95.9, and of course hashtag us Influential Fridays. If you want to call in, because I'd love to hear stories about how you've had challenges either creating or preserving wealth, call us on 0860 000959. But for me, one of the conversations we had that switched my thinking was we were talking about how little time I had to spend with the kids, specifically with my kids, because I was always traveling, always working. I was always landing somewhere, taking off somewhere. I was pulling in. I mean, there was a year, I had 2 exhaustion attacks, right? So I was pulling in 16, 17-hour days, 6 days in a week at a time, and I was doing it to make a lot of money. And one of the things you said to me was, do you realize that every time you are fruitless with that money, in effect, what you're doing is you're taking your kids' time? Because if you manage that money better, that would allow you the time and space to spend time with the people that you like, yeah?
Correct. And that's where we get back to that concept of freedom.
Yeah.
One of the things that wealthy people are able to do, or they're able to spend time doing the things that they absolutely are passionately love and things they really want to do every day with their lives, okay?
Yeah.
They don't have to do something like a 5-hour session at a job that they hate. They're able to focus on the things that matter, whether it be time with your children, whether it be exercise, whether it be, just an hour of contemplation, just spending a bit of meditation. But that's where wealth comes in. It's that freedom that you get.
Yeah.
And each time you take away from that, like I say, you're spending that future. And that's that dangerous thing that we all get stuck into over and over again. Instagram is fantastic because it shows all these people living this life. I'll give you an example. One of the big Instagram hits recently was Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. We all watched the fight. We all watched the build-up. And within that, Conor McGregor posted all these photos of him with the Rolls Royce and the G50 and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
None of them are his. They're all rented.
No.
Okay? So a lot of these stars who do this and show this lifestyle, it's not real. It's there just to create an image, to sell tickets, to sell you into trying to achieve something that, it's so far. It's not even within their reach. Okay, but they're trying to make you think, well, go and get it.
Somebody said something to me the other day. It was so profound. They said that the thing people don't understand about Instagram is it's the gram that's instant. Yeah. It's not what's in the picture. It's the picture that's instant. So if Vusi's worked 15 years to afford a Rolls Royce Wraith, for instance, he worked 15 years. That he took a picture of it means the picture's instant, but he still had to put in the 15 years. Very quickly, for a lot of our listeners listening in on this conversation, we come from a background, and there's this term that goes around called the black tax. Now, I hate the term. One, because my view is supporting the people who have been important for me to get to where I'm at can never be called a tax. I don't care how you look at it. It's wrong to call it a tax. But let's, for the purpose of this conversation, keep this term the black tax. So for a lot of young people listening to this conversation, we live in a world where as we make money, there are other people to whom we have to look after. So we have cousins, family members, mothers, grandmothers that we have to maintain, or for whom we have to help buy groceries. So for that person, they're listening to us talking about wealth and saving money, and they're going, yeah, but how do I save money when I barely have enough money for myself?
I think that's, it's a hard thing, and I think it doesn't apply. It's a global phenomenon, funny enough.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we talk about it as a black tax, but it's a global phenomenon now. The middle class in the world is getting squeezed harder and harder. It's getting tougher and tougher to make it ahead. And all I can say is that the way that you start that path, okay, is you've got to be willing to sacrifice something. You've got to be willing to give something up.
Yeah.
And I used an analogy in a talk a little while ago where I said, for example, your average family will go out and take out on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the takeout for a family of four is probably going to cost you around 300-400 rand.
Sure.
Now, if you were to say, right, you know what we're going to do? My family Friday night is pizza night. So we all sit down, we make pizzas together instead of buying them. So we probably save 250 rand there. If I were to just put that away, that 1,000 rand a month, okay, at 7%, growing at whatever inflation was, just the cost of a pizza, my weekly pizza, put away every single month, I'd probably have in the area of 800,000 rand saved up within the next 18 years. That's one child's education, private schooling taken care of.
Wow.
So it's those small differences that you make. It's going down to the corner shop in a car as opposed to walking or getting a bicycle. It's those little differences. And, I come from Cape Town. In Cape Town, we had to learn a culture of saving water. Okay, so we've all got these buckets next to our toilets and all these sort of things. And the same thing, saving is a culture. It's a cultural effect. If you look around, there's money you're wasting every single day. And it's those small rands and cents. It's the 2,000 rand we spoke about, which didn't seem like a lot.
Yeah.
It adds up so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how you start to make that difference.
Yeah.
If you look to say, I'm going to take 10%, and I'm never going to... Obviously, we pay everybody else. We pay the bank for our home loans. We pay the car dealership for our car. We pay the shop for our food. We never pay ourselves. If I was going to take 10% of my money and just pay myself and put that money to work and let it grow, it will change your life.
Let me ask you a question quickly. We've had a conversation about education. In fact, I was moaning at you and telling you how much I'm paying for my kids to go to school. Yeah. You gave me a statistic which scared me. For the benefit of the listeners in this conversation, share with the listeners what you said to me about the cost of funding education.
Okay, so you'll apologize. I apologize for getting a couple of percentages in here, but right now, okay, our incomes grow roughly in the same line with inflation.
Sure.
And inflation here is about 3-4%.
Sure.
Education is currently growing at a rate, the cost of education is growing at about 10% a year, which means that it's quite possible that within the next 18 years, education will not be affordable for the man in the street. Right now, if you're on a 50,000 rand a month salary, education is costing you around about a month's salary a year.
Yeah.
Within the next 7 years, that will jump to 2 months.
Yeah.
Now think about it, you're going to take a month of somebody's salary out. What that's going to do to them. Private schooling, okay, if you're lucky enough to be able to afford it, it's going to probably cost you within the next 12, 15 years, 500,000 rand a year for one child.
In tuition.
Just tuition. We haven't bought any school clothes. We haven't bought any sports equipment. We haven't paid for aftercare. Any of the other things, sports tours, all those other bits and pieces.
No, I think comrades, let's leave the land. Let's expropriate the schools. We're expropriating the schools without compensation.
But if you know what it looks like, if you know it and you start now, okay, so no more champagne for you, my friend. Yeah. Okay, we're on to drinking water at clubs because our kids' education. I said to somebody, if you want to know what the cost of it's like, call your 2 children, think about them. So you've got 2 kids, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
I want you to roll forward 10 years, and I want you to call them into your dining room and pick one and tell him he's not going to university. How's that going to feel?
Jeez.
I want you to put yourself in that position because that's what it does. All the little bits that we waste, that's what you're doing to yourself. That's what's going to happen.
You and I have often had the conversation about the psychology of wealth. Because one of the things and the conversation pieces for me that are interesting is people see the habits of wealth. So we see how wealthy people behave. But long before the behavior, we know that there is a thinking system. So talk to me a little bit about the psychology of wealth. Like if you were to give me the top 5 ways wealthy people think different to everybody else, what would you say they are?
There's a couple I thought about. The first one is read. Okay, now reading sounds everybody says, we must read. 80% of wealthy people read every day, but it's what they read that's interesting.
Yeah.
Only 10% of them read for entertainment. 94% of wealthy people read current affairs, biographies, and for education. And that's the big thing. They're constantly learning. They're constantly educating themselves. They're constantly upskilling and making themselves better.
Yeah.
The second thing that they do, okay, is they control their tempers. They control their moods. They control their fear. You know, the two biggest things.
Why is that important in the wealth conversation?
Because it makes fear and anger make you irrational, and they make your decisions bad. So when you're fearful, okay, you might make a bad decision that'll ultimately affect your wealth. You might not have the guts to go and invest in that business that you need to go and do.
Sure.
Since I've been sitting here this morning, I've spoken to two people who want to start their own businesses, and what's stopping them is fear. And you know what? What's the worst thing that can happen? You're 27 years old, 28, and you lose it all, you start again. They haven't accumulated that much yet.
Yeah.
You know, go out there and be, but fear is a big one.
Yeah.
Wealthy people are not ostentatious. They're about preserving capital.
Yeah.
Okay, it's one of the biggest things that they do. I know a family who have an empire, global soft drinks empire. They don't own any Porsches. There's no Ferraris. Their homes are beautiful, make no mistake, but they're not mansions. They don't fly. They fly business class. I'll give them that. They're comfortable, but they don't fly first class. You know, and it's those little differences where they live within their means.
Yeah.
You know, there's an interesting statistic in terms of what they say people should be spending. You know, no more than 25% of your income on housing.
No more than 25%.
25%, whether you rent or buy. No more than 10% on entertainment. No more than 5% of your annual wealth on holidays. How many of us breach that? But that's the secret to starting to build. That's living within your means.
Yeah. But there is a part of it. I mean, I let me tell you the part that I battle with. Right. To quote one of the urban poets of our time, the one and only Chris Brown, who said, "I work too hard to be bowling on a budget." So I'm like, I'm not going to be pulling in these hours. And Mike Fannin sits here and tells me that I can't buy a Porsche. If I want to buy the Porsche, I'm going to buy it.
No, you can, but maybe you just can't buy it today.
Right.
We're a generation that has lost the ability of patience. We don't have it.
Right.
We want it all tomorrow.
Right.
You can have a Porsche.
Right.
But you know what it takes? What you spoke about, the Instagram instant, it took 15 years.
Yeah.
It's going to take you those 15 years if you want the wraith.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't have it in year one and say, well, I'll pay it off over the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it when you've got that wealth and you can afford it.
Yeah. If I were, picture the scene. I'm sitting at OR Tambo, and a fellow walks into the airport, and I see this guy, and I can tell he's wealthy. What would I be looking for? Like, how do wealthy people look?
I think what it is generally, you know, they're extremely comfortable in their surroundings.
Right,
okay?
right.
You can see there's a relaxed aura because that fear and that pressure, that ability, the fact that I'm only doing something I really want to do makes me relaxed.
Yeah.
Anytime that you're traveling, you shouldn't be traveling, you know, you're tense.
Yeah.
You'll see it in terms of the clothing that they wear. Okay, it's not the luscious, flashy stuff with Hugo Boss written all over it or whatever it may be. You know, it's probably tailored.
Yeah.
It's probably bespoke.
Yeah.
You know, the watch, it hasn't got 1 million diamonds on it. It's something good. It's Swiss, I'm sure, but it's subtle.
Yeah.
You know, and the other thing I like about most of the truly wealthy people I've met, they're kind to people.
Absolutely.
They'll be the guy who's always saying good morning to each and every person that they're interact with. They say thank you. They say please.
Yeah.
They say excuse me.
Yeah.
And it's almost there's no longer a need to fight for their place in the world. They're so comfortable that they're willing to thank and give everybody else their space as well.
Yeah.
And that's a big characteristic. Sorry.
We're going to take a small break. When we come back, please, Bomkai, I'd like to have a conversation with you on 0860 I want you to talk to me a little bit about what you think wealth is and where maybe you found yourself making mistakes around money that you've earned, where you've blown it, where you've been prudent with it. Come and tell us your stories and let's learn from you.